Okay, I think I'll go ahead and get started. There may still be some folks coming in, and that's okay. I'll just continue to admit them. But thanks for everyone who are on this call today. We appreciate it. There's a variety of folks, applicants, parents, interested people. So we're glad to have you. And in a second, I'll introduce myself and the other folks on the call. But today is, as you can see, this is the Prague Connect program information session. So just as advertised, the intention is to just give you some more info about the program. But we do have a bonus. So the benefit of being on the Zoom call is that you get a chance to ask questions of us, but also more importantly, we have with us two former participants. So they'll be on the call and I'll ask them questions later. They'll share their experiences and we'll all be here together to answer any questions that you may have. To that end, if you could just refrain from asking questions to the end of the session, my part isn't too long, but I like to kind of get through that. Usually that helps answer questions you may already have. But then at the end, we'll have sufficient time to answer anything that you may have that you're interested in. Just one quick housekeeping rule. I mean, we're all kind of Zoom conditioned at this point, so just please keep yourself muted to just eliminate the background noise unless you're the one talking. And then, yeah, so this is recorded and this is going to be shared to everyone who registered. So we have your contact info, and that way we'll share this with you in case you need to leave early, or if you've arrived late, or if you want to refer back to this later. Okay. All right. So with that, yeah, again, this is the Prague Connect info session, and my name is Alex Wessner. I am the assistant director with NC State Prague. My role essentially is I work on campus here in Raleigh, and I help in what we refer to as the pre-departure phase of the study abroad programs that we run in Prague. What that entails largely is application support, inquiries, general interest, orientation, visa support for programs that require visas, things like that. So I sort of get kind of folks ready, help in those stages, and then I sort of quote unquote pass them off to my colleagues in Prague when the program begins. Now, it's not as clean as that. Of course, we always kind of have involvement on both sides of that divide, but I am largely here. And physically, I'm in Raleigh. I'm over here in Central Campus at Holmes Hall, if you're familiar with that. The rest of my staff, they have the privilege of being in Prague. So they work out of the Prague office. So if and when you do go in this program, you will see them and be with them in Prague. Yeah, and so they're not here today, obviously, because it's about midnight. So we wanted them to sleep, but that's going to be just me. And you'll meet them later if you carry on with the program for sure. So, but we have two other wonderful guests here today. And they are former participants, as I mentioned. We'll hear more from them, but we want to just get a quick intro from them. And Miri, if you'd like to start us off.
Hi, my name is Miri Fagan. It says I'm studying political science. I actually changed my major partly because of one of the classes I took last semester. The sociology professor was fantastic, and she pushed me to change my major to sociology. So that is what I'm studying in addition to international studies, as well as a French minor. And I participated in the Prague Connect program that happened in fall of 2022.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary.
I'm Abby Edwards, and I am in environmental sciences. I also participated in the Prague Connect program in 2022, and I do not have enough good things to say about it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. And we'll look forward to hearing more about those good things later in the show. All right. So I'll go through a few slides, y'all. I'll just kind of kick us off with some just basics. So orient us with the European Center. So the Connect program is one of a handful of different programs that NC State runs at its center in Prague. We refer to this as the European Center in Prague. Essentially, you can think of this as NC State's campus in the heart of Europe in Prague. This is our sort of building that we rent out, and this is an extension of Raleigh's campus in essence. The classes we offer there are NC State classes. The instructors are university approved instructors. So it is a really cool thing that we have this facility. over there in the heart of Europe. It is the only, fun fact, the only permanent international facility that the university has. So it's all in Prague, and we've had sort of a footprint in Prague since really the early 90s. The College of Design had this initiative, the study abroad, faculty-led programs that sort of grew and grew and grew. And eventually it became so popular that it sort of became a wider university initiative to expand those opportunities to students from other colleges. And so that's where we are now. We are able to offer our programs to students from any major, any college at the university, and even students outside of NC State as well. But this particular program, which we'll talk about shortly more specifically, is just for NC State students and just for those admitted for the spring semester. But so we've had a long history in Prague. This particular center, which actually you can see here on the top image, that yellow building, this is the NC State European Center. So this is where students would be taking classes. This particular location, we've had this since 2017. So going on almost 6 years, we've been there. And if for anyone who's ever been to Prague, surely if you were there, I assume you've visited the big Old Town Square. Well, this building is just off of that. So it's just a wonderful location right off of the main Old Town Square in the historic part of the heart of the city. So it's a great location. It's a privilege that we have that there. This is basically where we send, again, we have a lot of different programs, and we send roughly 200 plus students every calendar year. It represents the largest, most popular study abroad program at the university. And thankfully, happy to report we're back up to pre-COVID numbers. In fact, we were surpassing, our participation is surpassing that of before COVID hit us. So that's a happy report. So that's a little bit about the center. There's a location if you're interested. The center itself, though, if we dig in a little bit deeper, that's where we'll find the classroom space, our staff offices, student areas like computer labs, kitchen space, courtyards. Everything basically happens there at the center. So when you're over there on the program, you spend a heck of a lot of time at the center, and of course the residence, which we'll talk about later. But this it's centrally located. You're not spread out. You're all right there, which is really nice. So you're taking classrooms on one floor. We have staff offices, maybe on the same or just below that floor. And then you have a lot of interaction with faculty, staff, fellow students. So it creates this sort of really dynamic campus feel in the heart of a big city. So students, they do have access, of course, to this building, after hours access as well, because if they're doing schoolwork and they need that space for it. So we give you those cards and that access when you get to Prague, of course. But a little bit about the center and the space there. All right. So now we're going to dig in a little bit into the program, the specifics of the Connect program. So for 2023, this is actually probably definitely our 6th year running the program. We had a little interruption with COVID, of course, like everyone, but this will be the 6th time we're doing this program. For 2023, the arrival date is August 30th. So it all kicks off with arrival date, which means basically when students get to Prague physically, and that's when the program officially begins. It runs to November 22nd, and if anyone knows their calendar, this is the Wednesday right before Thanksgiving. So by design, we end it so that you can get back home and enjoy Thanksgiving with your families. It's also by design because if anyone's really good at math, quick math, that's I think 84 days. And we want the program to be under 90 days because that means we do not have to get a visa. So assuming most, if not all, applicants are U.S. citizens, the USA is one of a list of countries that's exempt from a visa for short-term stays for non-employment purposes. And so essentially, we do not have to go through the visa application process for the Connect program. And if anyone's ever gone through visa application processes, you'll know that's a good thing. So it's a little bit tedious to do those. So no visa for this program, but it is 86 days. And you need to really adhere to those days, because otherwise you would be, if you exceed 90, you would need a visa for that. So anyway, so those are the dates. The Connect program, and you may be familiar with some of this from looking at our webpage, but this is a program that's pretty unique. It's just, as I mentioned, just for first-year students, those admitted for the spring to NC State. And with that comes, there's a lot of transition, of course, into a university, but also to begin a semester abroad, there's transition aspects to that as well. And so it's pretty unique in that sense to have a study abroad program for first-year students. Pretty much every other program, especially programs at Prague, we have a minimum sophomore class standing. And so this is a pretty cool, pretty unique opportunity for those new students coming in. So for Connect, students, they're going to be, since you all are admitted for spring, it's a little bit different in the fall in terms of student classification. So you'll be registered as what we refer to as NDS. So it's really non-degree studies, non-degree seeking students. And so what this means is some practical things, which I'll touch upon later, but it basically means the classes you take, they will still count towards your degree once you matriculate in the spring semester. So while you'll be non-degree seeking in the fall, those classes will count and eventually be pulled in for spring 2024 when you officially begin at NC State. So on this program, you take a full load of courses. And so that's, in this case, going to be 14 academic credits. And I'll show you later what courses specifically, but you do take a full load of classes. Those classes will count, and that includes your grades, and they'll count eventually to your GPA. So you take a full load of courses. There's also going to be orientation at the very beginning, of course. We have for this program a unique in-person on-campus orientation, pre-departure orientation. That takes place actually on August 3rd. So that'll be here on campus in Raleigh. It's a one-day thing. It's for participants and their parents. We'll give you a lot more information about that later, but for now, just know we'll have a pretty structured, pretty healthy pre-departure orientation and on-site orientation for this program. There's also cultural activities, and there's 2 trips. So we have built into the program 2 excursions. One is to another location within the Czech Republic, and I'm sure Abby and Miri will probably talk about Český Krumlov later. And then one's to an out-of-country trip, and that's going to be in 2023 to Poland. So that's all part of the program, all built in. It's already paid for as part of the program cost, and all the logistics and everything are arranged by us. So, and we'll look at that a little bit later too. So the Connect program also overlaps with another one of our programs that we run in the fall called Classic. Classic is sort of our traditional NC State Prague program. We run this program all year round, 3 different versions. But this is one of those sort of standard programs for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And so I mentioned this here because the Connect students have an opportunity to sort of experience a small version of campus life, because they'll have upperclassmen and other class standing students there as well. So they can kind of start to interact with older students, and you can start to kind of get that feel. And they can also help you and support you and provide good resources and information about student life as well. And so last year, 2022, the cohort that Abby and Miri were on, we accepted 36 students. We had about 34 ended up committing. So we had 34 students, which was our largest cohort for Connect. And this year, which this may be a question a lot of you have, we're aiming to take about the same amount for this year as well. So 30 plus. Yeah. Okay. So carrying on, again, if you have questions that are running through your mind, just hold on to them. We'll have some time at the end for those, as I mentioned. All right, so classes, as I mentioned, full load of classes. Everyone pretty much takes the same preset class schedule. There's basically, we run 2 tracks of classes. And as you can see here, these are the 2 tracks. they're essentially the same. And you'll notice there's just one class that's different. The first track is including a European politics course. And the second one, instead of the European politics, we have an intro biology course. That's the only difference. So everyone's taken this kind of preset amount of courses, and all of these classes again are going to count towards the spring when you are admitted officially at NC State. But these classes are also going to start to fulfill, if you're not familiar with GEPs, this is the General Education Program. So every student at NC State has to have a certain number of classes that meet like a natural science GEP category, social science, and a whole list of categories you have to get a class in before you graduate, no matter what your degree is. So this shows you which GEP category that these classes will count towards. And perhaps you can sort of think about in terms of what you're most interested in. And part of the application process is indicating your preference for track. But this shows you the classes that we have on offer. Classes are taught by faculty approved by NC State, and by and large, they're going to be a European faculty, largely Czech, but not always. And the content is going to be like content that if you were taking the same classes here at NC State. So that's a common question we get. How do the classes differ? It's not like you're getting a lesser version of a class over there than in Raleigh. It's just different faculty, but the content has to be standardized and approved by the home departments here. So you're not missing out on anything. You're getting the same rigor and the same standard of academics in each course. So yeah, and we'll talk more about classes later. I'm sure our participants, former participants would like to share about that as well. Okay, so again, this is a study abroad program. So there's not just classes, there's cultural activities and excursions that are built in as well. A study abroad is sort of thought of as an opportunity to do classroom work, but also to have the environment, the local environment, the city be your classroom as well. And so a lot of things in Prague can sort of reinforce and enhance the lessons of the classroom. So we do take students various cultural excursions. There's a whole wealth of historic and cultural sites in Prague that we do take them on. Some are optional, and certainly they have those opportunities on their own as well. So we'll do things like, orientation, obviously, at the beginning of the program. There'll be little crash courses in Czech language. Czech cooking classes are optional. We have those things planned throughout the semester. And then, as I mentioned, we have excursions built in as well, one within Czech Republic and one outside of it, and then additional day trips we'll have planned throughout the semester as well. Now, that's just the planned stuff. Of course, students are welcome to travel around on their own if they're comfortable with that, and that's of course up to them. But these are just the things that are built in, already paid for, and things that we provide accommodations, transportation, and logistics support. Okay, now switching gears a little bit to housing. So the way housing works is everyone on the program, we have housing already set up for you. So everyone stays in the same location. You won't be spread out throughout the city. We have set aside buildings that we rent out that are essentially like dorms, kind of apartment buildings that we have just for our students. So you'll have these, it'll be all of you in the same building. It's going to be dorm style, so you start to get used to sort of that setup, which means, roommates, shared bathrooms, things like that. And the location for the housing in relation to the center, so where you're taking classes, is not too far away. It's about a 15 to 30 minute commute at most. This can be walked. I've done it myself, and a leisurely walk is about 30 minutes in between, but most likely you'll take the tram. So the tram is, for those who aren't familiar, like an above ground train. You see these all over Prague. These you just hop on, hop off. You take that and do a little bit of walking, and it's about a 15-20 minute commute. So not bad at all. And we'll show you that route when you're there for orientation. But that just kind of gives you a sense of relative locations. Now, the housing itself, again, as I mentioned, this is a building that we have all of you in the same place. It's dorm style. All the bedding, the furniture, it's all included. So you don't need to worry about buying that stuff on site or bringing anything over. Everything there is ready to go because we use this space again for all our program participants. The only thing, just a side note, the only thing in terms of bedding that's needed is like a shower towel. Those are not provided. So you either need to bring one or buy one on site, no big deal, but everything else is there ready to go. Each residence, they're going to have kitchen space. You'll have shared kitchens, and these are areas where you can cook food, cook meals, hang out, eat your meals. You'll have kitchen supplies there included, and we'll set aside a set of like plates and utensils and cups for each student, so you don't have to fight with others about that. So you have your own set you're responsible for. In the building, there should be a laundry facility on site, so you don't need to go far away to do your laundry. And then we basically will have some student not quite housing assistants, but they're Czech students that usually live in our residence that work for us to kind of keep an eye on things and act as a resource in case you need anything. So they're usually one on each floor, and they're just there to kind of help out if you need anything, or act as a resource, point you in the right direction, and they help out in our office as well. You can actually see some more pictures of the interiors of the housing on our website, and you can see the link there at the bottom of the slide. Okay, moving on. So now we get to sort of program costs. So how much does all this cost? So the program cost, and I'll tell you what that means specifically, what it includes, what it does not include on the next slide. But the program cost is, it's, as you see, there's $10,500 for the Connect program. And that is sort of the one-time program cost that you pay. There's an administrative fee, and what that is, it's like a $75 application fee plus a $375 study abroad fee at the time of commitment. So those two things make up the $450, and then we get to the $10,950, which is what's considered the fixed cost. We know that won't change. Now, what is and this sort of anticipates my next slide, but what is not included in the program costs is what you see below that. And so the airfare is the biggest one. So a note on that. So the flights, how do I get over to Prague? How does that work? Do we do a group flight? What do I need to do for that? So we don't do group flight bookings for any of our programs for a number of reasons. So the flight would just be something that you would just purchase on your own whenever you want, and to do that however you wish, meaning however you want to get to Prague. It doesn't matter to us as long as you're there on the arrival day. Okay, so August 30th. Some some folks like a certain airline or a certain route, or maybe they want to build in other travel. Again, it doesn't matter to us as long as we see you physically at the airport or in Prague on August 30th. This gives you sort of an estimate of what a round trip flight might cost from, say, the distance of Raleigh to Prague. And there's no direct flight, unfortunately, yet. You have to usually go through one or two other cities. And I'm sure a lot of you on this call have done flight searches, so you know that this can fluctuate quite a bit from day to day, hour to hour, whatever variable it is. There's a lot of variation, but this is generally a reliable estimate for airfare round trip. Now, the next big expense not included would be food, would be meals, right? And so the $1,500 there is sort of a rough estimate of what meals generally cost students through the course of a semester. Now, Prague itself, in terms of living expenses, it's pretty comparable to Raleigh, I'd say, which may come as a surprise since Prague is considerably larger than Raleigh. But you can still eat pretty well, and it's not like if you were in London or Paris, the cost of food is a lot higher. You can eat pretty cheaply and pretty well. So meals, that's roughly what it would be, and this includes a combination of going buying your groceries, making your meals for the week, or maybe going out to eat a little bit here and there too. The next thing is the passport. Now, this is an important point because hopefully everyone is either in possession of a valid passport or will be in time for departure. So the passport obviously is required to do international travel. and you would just need to be in possession of that by the departure date. Okay, so you would need that before you fly out. The visa, we should just delete this because the visa, and this assumes everyone's sort of a visa-free country, a citizen, like a US citizen. You don't need a visa, as I already explained, so you don't need to worry about this fee. And then we have personal expenses. This is sort of like a catch-all term for everything else. Like, you get to Prague, you realize you need to buy some toothpaste. Maybe you want to get some gifts for mom and dad and your brother and sister back home. Just basically expect to have some other expenses is basically what this is. Okay. And finally, textbooks and supplies. If you're not familiar with this already, college books and textbooks can be, for some reason, really expensive. And that hasn't changed. So you can expect to pay something for those things as well. Generally, we try to be cognizant of costs and make things digitally accessible, but you will still have some expenses for school supplies. And so you get to an estimated total, and so this gives you a sense of total costs, both included in the program costs and those other things as well. Now, as promised, what does this NC State program cost entail? So this is going to include the big items like tuition and the accommodation. So the courses, the classes, and your housing. So there's the big items. So there won't be a separate like tuition charge, or there won't be a separate housing charge if you're doing this program. It's just going to show up as the program costs, and it's going to include the tuition, the accommodation. It'll also include health insurance. So we enroll all of our participants automatically in GeoBlue International Health Insurance. So very important. This will cover all participants for the duration of the program. And if they travel like throughout Europe, it covers a wider geographic area than Prague, than Czech Republic. So students, everyone will have that coverage automatically from the program start to the program end. It also includes those 2 excursions, those 2 program trips that I mentioned already. We, of course, will book the transportation there and back and the accommodations for while we're there, and that's all built into this as well. And then certain cultural events, things we might, go on during the program, also like orientation materials and things like that. And lastly, and I didn't mention this, but when you're in Prague, as I mentioned, there's a tram you take a lot. There's also a metro system in Prague that's really good. There's a very widespread bus system as well. So all those city transportation modes, you have the city pass, the travel pass that we give you, that's included in your costs. And so you just use this one travel pass to get around any of those forms of transportation while you're in Prague. And so we'll give that to you at orientation when you set foot in Prague. And you have that, it's got your picture on it. You just make sure not to lose it. You just keep it on you, and you can hop on the buses, hop on, hop off, hop on, off, hop off, without buying like separate tickets. And so that's all built into this as well. Now, what it doesn't include, and I sort of covered this already previously, the airfare, the meals, the passport fee if you need that. Well, you need the passport, but if you have to renew or get an original passport, that's where that fee comes in play. And then textbooks and personal expenses. All right, so kind of wrapping up here soon, just almost done with my part, but I want to mention one thing about scholarships and funding. So as I mentioned, the Connect program is unique for a number of reasons. But again, since you're going to be classified as non-degree seeking or non-degree studies, this has some ramifications. And the big one in terms of financial aid context is that you would not be eligible for federal financial aid or state financial aid. So for that reason, and that obviously is sort of a bummer, but for that reason, there are some other ways to possibly fund your study abroad Connect program experience. Our office has its own NC State Prague scholarship. We do have this, it's currently open, and you can start an application through our website. We have a deadline of April 28th, but this is a scholarship. We award amounts in the range of $1,000 to $5,000. We have a handful of these, and so we can't give everyone this, and it's not going to cover the full costs, but we We want to try to do something to offset the costs since you're not eligible for that federal aid and state aid. So that won't cover everything, but it could help. So definitely apply for that if you're interested in that. Now, there's other sources of funding you may be eligible to use, things like VA funding, VA awards, private loans, and things like that. But just to let you know, the financial aid and the federal and state level are not something that you could be eligible for since you're in that NDS status, not until you're here in the spring. All right, now a little bit about the application process for the program. So we've had the application open, and for some of you on the call, maybe you've already started an application, maybe you are thinking about doing that. The way it works is you just go to our webpage and you'll see a link, a little red button that says apply now. You click that and that sort of walks you through the steps, the online application system. Pretty much everything is online. There are some forms to sign and fill out. You can e-sign those. So you can really kind of do everything online. So you just kind of finish that up there. You walk through those steps, and then it'll kind of tell you your progress. You've completed this number of items out of this number. And then eventually when you've completed everything, it'll tell you that you've submitted an application. So it's all kind of online. One big thing though, and we have this description and instructions in the application system. One big component of your Connect application is the video, okay? There is a video submission requirement, which we do look at closely. And this is where you kind of you get to know you, you share a little bit about yourself and specifically your motivations for wanting to participate. The details, the question prompts, we have very specifically laid out in the instructions on that application system. But there is a little video, a short video to make. You can get creative with it. It can be fun, but we kind of want to get to know you, kind of see, personality that we can't always see through just, written answers in a questionnaire. So the deadline to complete the application process is May 12th, which is just a little over 3 weeks away. So if you haven't started one, definitely encourage you to start one. And if you have questions along the way, do let us know. I do try to answer all those questions as best I can, but definitely if you get hung up on something or something doesn't make sense, that's a good time to reach out to us. So the bottom sentence, don't let it scare you. There is limited space in the program. There's obviously limitations to all programs, but as I mentioned, last year we took about 36 students, and that's usually our capacity for this program. And it's for 2023, it's going to be about the same. And so you can't take everyone, unfortunately. We'd love to be able to, but just to let you know, there are limits. So we won't know how many we have to say yes or no to until we know how many applications come in. So. Okay, and you may have more questions about that process and competitiveness, I'm sure, which we can get to in the Q&A section coming up here shortly. So just to sort of wrap up, important dates and deadlines. As I mentioned, the scholarship deadline, it's found on our webpage. It's just a simple Google form. It's really quick and really easy. So definitely I would encourage you to do that. There's just about a little over a week left until the deadline for the scholarship. With the scholarship, we'll review those and then we'll notify you no later than May 12th. Which not coincidentally is also the application deadline. And so if you're applying for the scholarship and if it's going to be really important to get one in order to come in the program, that's why we have those notifications lined up with the application deadline. So you'll know if you've received one before you absolutely have to submit an application. So application deadline, again, May 12th, all those come in and then we sort of stop and we start to review them all. Okay, this is not really a rolling admission, rolling application process. We run this one really with a hard deadline, and then we just review everybody, and then we send acceptances within the 2-week time frame. So by May 26th, so no later than, it could be earlier, but no later than May 26th, we will notify everyone who's applied about the acceptance. And so we'll send those out. When you receive one, if you've received an acceptance decision, you also have some time to let us know what your decision is. Okay. So don't feel like you have to tell us right away. We realize it might be a big decision. Maybe you're weighing other options and things like that. You have a 2-week period to tell us that you're committing or you're not committing. Okay. So just remember that. So we should know, therefore, by mid-June, of course, who's definitely coming, and that will give us time to prepare for our pre-departure on-site orientation that I talked about earlier on August 3rd. And that's when we'll meet everyone who's coming, hopefully parents too, and we can give you some great information and prepare you for that, for your departure. So August 3rd. You may have questions about payment. So we talked about the costs and things like that. So the payment deadline, we pretty much adhere to the university's, payment calendar. And so for the fall billing deadline, that lines up with about July 26th. So if you do accept, if you're coming on the program, what will happen is you'll, receive that billing, and then you just would have to pay it by the 26th. If you end up, not coming, then you won't be billed, and so that's to be expected. But 26 is about where the payment deadline is for the program. All right. So the boring part's over. My part's over. We get to the fun part finally. So we get to hear from the past participants. So Mary and Abby are here, and I have a few question prompts for you guys, just to kind of get you talking about it. And feel free to sort of share whatever you want. If you want to go off topic a little bit, fine by me. But I just have three main question prompts because we want to make sure you share your experiences with those on this call. First, very broadly, why did you choose to study abroad on the Prague Connect program? Mary, you want to have a shot at that first?
Sure. So I think a big one that all of us really faced was that mainly it was either go to Prague or stay at community college for a semester or work, whatever, before coming to NC State in the spring. And ultimately, I'm very, very happy that I chose to go study in Prague. But also a big part of this was because I figured why not study abroad now instead of waiting till later when I might have less time to do it. And I think also that the cost of the program is really, really beneficial in terms of what you get out of it, because within the 3 months that I was in Prague, I got to experience the most concentrated in one period than I ever have throughout any other part of my life.
That's great. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, it's a good point too about, not having time later on. And, for those who are thinking about the Connect program, and maybe you have other study abroad options that you're thinking about later, our programs we do in this Connect program, we have, GEPs that we typically offer. And so usually in the course of your academic life, you're going to knock out those GEPs in the first couple of years of your university life. And so some students don't realize that sort of until later when, maybe they're thinking about coming on a study abroad program like Prague or Connect. And then they find out, well, I can't take courses, or what's on offer there doesn't suit my schedule. It's kind of too late. So just kind of got me to think about that a little bit. Anyway, Abby.
I chose to go abroad because I had never left the United States before I went to Prague. And I was initially pretty disappointed by my spring acceptance to NC State. So when I learned about this opportunity, I absolutely jumped at it. I applied almost immediately. And I didn't know what to expect. I'd never gone, never traveled internationally, but it really paid off. I feel like I learned so much inside and outside of the classroom in those 3 months. It was just a really amazing experience. And I learned a lot about myself, about that I'd love to travel, and I plan on studying abroad again in something more kind of fine-tuned to my major in the future. And I'm just really grateful for the Prague Connect program that was able to kind of show me that part of myself that I really do enjoy, traveling. And so don't be intimidated if you've never left the United States before.
That's good advice. Yeah, thanks, Abby, for that. Great. Okay, so next one. So how would you say that the Connect program in Prague impacted your your overall college experience so far, and maybe possible work future, work direction going forward?
So the biggest thing, as I already mentioned before in my introduction, is that my sociology class that I took last semester really opened up my mind and pushed me completely into a direction that I had not thought of before. Also, I really appreciate the stress on having or studying different fields during the first semester, because you really get to study different things that you might not have studied before, and you get to understand what sort of thinking style and what you like to learn.
Great. And how about you, Abby?
I really enjoyed getting to kind of see how Europe and Prague specifically did environmental science over there. They're so, I feel like, far ahead of the United States. So that kind of was really interesting for me to get to see a whole nother perspective of, what I already kind of knew I wanted to do with my career. And obviously, like I mentioned, I learned that I love to travel, whether it was a weekend to Barcelona or whether it was, extended periods of time. And I'm just really excited to see, where else I can travel and what I can do, hopefully, with my environmental science career.
Awesome. So what was one thing that Mary, that most surprised you about it could be the program in particular, or being in Prague or being abroad? So what was kind of the maybe the most surprising thing when you were there?
I think one of the big ones was how accessible travel is. Abby and I both really took this opportunity to travel as much as possible. And so I was able to travel, of course, by plane, by flying into Prague. I took a trip to Paris on a bus there and back. It was like 13 and a half hours each way. It was very long, but ultimately I'm happy I got to experience that. Also traveling by train to Vienna, to Berlin, and there's all sorts of, I think, discounts and like deals that you can find. And if anybody has any questions later on, I would love to share those tips that I have for you.
Cool.
I think the most surprising thing, I don't know. I think I agree. Like the traveling was surprisingly easy, and I just was amazed by how much I fell in love with the city and the culture and just meeting new people from all over the world, because Prague is very Central Europe. So, and it's a tourist attraction, or not attraction, but it's a touristy city. So you'll get people just coming through Prague on the weekend, like similar to how we would go to other places. I met people from all over the world, just, being a friendly, loud American. But I wouldn't say I even experienced like that much culture shock. I just was surprised by how much I really enjoyed the culture and adapted kind of easier than I expected.
That's great. And speaking of culture shock and things like that, so we've talked a bit about sort of the bright things and the good things and the exciting things. But what would you say might be one of the biggest challenges maybe you faced or you encountered while being over there? Again, Prague specifically, or studying abroad in general?
Honestly, I did not have many issues. I'm very thankful that I didn't. However, in October, it was a busy month of both. It was like travel and then me having horrible dehydration. So horrible that I stayed in bed for days on end, and then traveling again. And then I got food poisoning. So I definitely experienced some hardships. I think me getting food poisoning was like the worst thing that happened to me throughout the semester by far. And so sort of having to try to navigate the Czech medical system initially by myself was difficult, but then I was lucky that the NC State Prague staff was so supportive and they were able to help me get a doctor's appointment and figure out like how to get medications, etc. And one of the housing assistants was able to go with me to my appointment and help me pick up my medicine at the pharmacy. So I'm very, very thankful for that.
I also had my experience with, illness. I got COVID, so I was not able to go on the Chesky Krumlov experience, which was honestly the biggest FOMO of my life. I was so sad. But of course, the Prague housing assistants were really sweet. They brought me groceries. I was all up on the 4th floor, locked away in a quarantine room. Yeah, but it wasn't that bad. I just was really bummed that I wasn't on the excursion. But I also had my experience with the Prague medical, the hospital, not the hospital, but just like I had to go to the doctor. I was having like hives or like a rash, and Martina, one of the student coordinators, she's amazing. I love her. She helped me so much, and she was able to, kind of like defend me in Czech because Czechs they're very, but Martina's awesome. There were hardships, there was some anxiety, some homesickness. The Prague staff really just makes a world of difference.
Good to hear. Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Mary. One last question for you. So you were, think back when you were first thinking about the program or applying, or maybe you were on the Connect info session last year. For those, what would you tell yourself or tell the folks in this call, like if you had anything to tell them in terms of recommendations or tips, what would you tell them? What would you say?
For the actual application itself, I would definitely make sure to spend a lot of time on the video. It's something that I actually talked to the staff about last semester, and just how much they consider that. And it is really a really big factor in your application. It shows a lot about how you would approach a new experience. And so definitely spend time refining that, make sure it's not sloppy or anything. And in Prague, my biggest tip is explore as much as possible. It doesn't matter if you are traveling outside the country for a weekend or staying in Prague, but I think especially in Prague, there's so many things that I didn't get to do. And I had a giant list of what I wanted to do. And I'm upset that I didn't get to do all of it, but there's also like just so many cool things going on. And the NC State Prague staff also gives recommendations weekly of things going on around the city. So highly recommend exploring as much as you can.
I'd say I agree, take the video seriously and find something that works for you and can kind of express who you are in your video. Like me personally, I set it up where my dad sat behind the camera and asked me the questions because that's what made me feel the most comfortable answering them. I didn't feel really like good about just talking into a camera. So I had my dad there with me, whatever makes it work for you, whatever, and be honest, be truthful about what you want out of this experience. Because I think that will really, they're choosing their applicants, wisely. So, and while I was in Prague, my number one tip is go to Golden Egg. It's a breakfast place in Žižkov, and they have the meanest breakfast sandwiches and pancakes. And then definitely a lot of exploring. I also had a big Prague bucket list, and you're gonna be tired, your feet are gonna hurt, but you gotta get up, you gotta go, you gotta walk around Old Town. Me and my roommate, who is actually my roommate here at State now, we're still very best friends. We would go to the McDonald's in the middle of New Town, like that strip in the center of Prague, and sit on a bench and eat fries and people watch for hours. It was just the little things like that can really make the experience that much better.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Abby. Now they're going to stick around too we're going to jump into a Q&A session. So we'll get to hear maybe more from them in a sec. So with that, there's about 10 minutes left in the hour. So I want to make sure, as promised, to get to your questions. Now, you can feel free to throw these in the chat, or you can, unmute yourself at the time and ask. I'm going to start us off though with a couple questions, good questions that were sent already in the chat. So let me just start off with these while you're thinking about your questions. So the first one has to do with classes and course registration. So basically, the question is, with that, how do we keep them on track to graduate? And will participating in the program set students behind? And so my answer would be no, because the courses, and let me jump back to that slide. The classes that you take here are going to be all counting all what we call matriculating into the spring term. And so these are all NC State courses, and they're all going to count and come with you in the spring. And so these will actually, so as I mentioned, the general education program is required for every student at NC State. So that means you have to basically fulfill, a certain number of credit hours in each category. And there's lots of different categories, and you see here in this right-hand column what some of those are, like natural sciences or social sciences, or what we call global knowledge. So these classes will start counting towards those, and you have to have a certain number of electives for whatever major you take. And so all of these will start counting, and so it shouldn't set anyone behind, and it shouldn't put you at a disadvantage in terms of being on track. And so these are going to count. They're going to show up on your transcript. They're going to be part of your NC State student record. Okay. You will get graded for these classes, and that's one thing that definitely you have to go into being mindful of. So it is a study abroad program, but you want to take the classes seriously. You do get a GPA. It starts to count for your GPA. You get a letter grade. It's not just like a pass fail or just an attendance thing. They are classes, and it's a start of the college career. It just happens to be in Prague. So the second question I have here real quick that I want to address is about the language. Good question. And so, Czech Republic, as you probably know, they speak Czech there, and no one else really does outside of Czech. It's not like Spanish or, French or English. You don't hear this much outside of the native country. So in Prague itself, thankfully, as we heard earlier, it's a very touristy place. So the city itself will have a lot of people from around the world. And English is spoken everywhere in Prague, very, very widely. So you don't need to know any Czech to succeed, to do well, to thrive, to live over there in Prague. Now, having said that, we do sort of give you a crash course in Czech, so you get some exposure to it. We will eventually, and this is part of the orientation process, we'll recommend some resources for Czech, kind of just getting familiar with it, like things like Duolingo, which I'm sure you know about. But you don't need to know or have any proficiency level whatsoever. All the instruction and classes obviously are in English, and then you can get around and function and live in Prague without Czech. Now, if you travel outside of Prague, in the country, you may not see as much English, but it usually isn't so much an issue. Now, that's my answer. Now, Mary and Abby, what would you say? Does that sort of square up with your experience?
Yes and no. I think you don't need to know any Czech, but it definitely helps.
Yeah.
Within the first couple of days, you will pick up on some basic Czech words like hello, goodbye, thank you, etc. And by the end of the semester, you should easily be able to go to the grocery store and navigate through there using Czech. Also, I will say that I have the benefit of not only speaking English, but also being fluent in Russian, which is my native language, as well as French. And French is not the most useful in the Czech Republic, however, it is useful being in Europe. And Russian, being a Slavic language, has helped me out a lot.
And I'm going to give the perspective as someone who took Latin in high school. So I have very minimal language skills. Me personally, whenever I would attempt to speak Czech to like a cashier or something, they'd start speaking English to me. So they kind of knew that I was an American trying really hard to order a coffee. But yeah, I think it's more of a respect thing to just try and attempt to learn the language. And it's a really cool, it's a hard language to learn. It's good to challenge yourself. When I got admitted to the program, I was Duolingoing every day just to get excited, get prepared a little bit, know the hello, please, thank you, that kind of stuff. But I definitely had the experience where I would try and speak Czech and they just start speaking English to me because they could tell.
Yeah, definitely. So not necessary, but it's always helpful to know some words wherever you're going. Of course, the locals appreciate it, but you can certainly get by without it. So a question in the chat also about family. So if family want to visit you, see you in Prague, would that be allowed? Yeah, so you know, it's certainly, you know, you can't really stay at the dorm or anything in the residence, but you know, we can show you, tell you give you some insights into good places to stay, and you can of course visit. You know, you're free to set that up as you want it. So yeah, so we wouldn't keep family away from you from the students at all, certainly. Yeah. So did Abby, did your family come, friends, anyone come visit you while you were there?
I didn't have any family that could come just because my parents were busy working. But I know that everyone who was in my suite, all their parents were able to visit. They actually were able to find pretty affordable and really nice like housing. And they were able to come in the dorm, but obviously not stay or anything.
My mom and sister did come visit me, and they found a really, really nice hotel for a great price in pretty close to Old Town. So it wasn't far from me. It was really easy for me to get to them. And we also took a trip to Italy, the three of us, on a weekend. So we got to fly to Venice and see that city. And it was really cool to be able to show my mom and sister around where I had been having the best time of my entire life. So I definitely recommend getting your family over there.
Cool. Awesome. Nice. All right. Next question. How many students usually apply to this program? Great question. So, again, this is going to be the sixth time we do this. So last year, for example, you know, we accepted initially 36 students. We had, I don't know, maybe about 40 or so applications, 40 plus. So it kind of, you know, supply demand kind of matched up fairly well. Can't say how many we're going to have this time. I can tell you non-specifically that it's going to be at least that as well this year around. So we'll see how many fully complete. Right now, I can only see those who have started, and people are going to be at different progress levels at this point. But we do expect it to be full. We do expect it to kind of hit capacity based on what we see so far. So unfortunately, I can't get. I wish I knew more. I wish I could tell you exactly, but that's sort of all I can say for now. Speaking of applications, we do have a question about the video. And so I mentioned this video submission. It's been talked about a little already. Where do you find information on it? Where do I submit it? So in the application itself, you'll see something, a questionnaire called, I think it's Prague Connect specific questionnaire, something like that. In there, you'll see some questions, and then you'll see instructions on the video, what to do itself. So you'll see it in the application system. It'll give you a kind of a paragraph of what the video should be focused on, some question prompts and things like that. So you should see it in the application system. Okay. What is the best mailing address to send in consent forms for students who are currently underage? Whom do we address these forms to? Right. So in the application system, there are some forms, questionnaires to read and sign. And then if you're under the age, they need to be signed by a legal guardian or parent. Those, if they can't be submitted as an e-sign, e-signature, then those can be mailed over, or actually, better yet, more quickly, I can give you an email address just to send those as an attachment if you're comfortable doing that. I can send that over to save you a stamp, and certainly save you a trip to campus, because that shouldn't be necessary at this point. So I'm going to put in the chat here for those who are curious about that, my email address, abwestern@ncsu.edu, and you can just send them there by email. Okay, so let's see here. I know we're kind of right at the end here, but just I see a couple more questions. Let me see. I got to probably pick and choose here. How will roommates be chosen? So we will eventually send out a form that sort of asks questions about, like, you know, lifestyle, living preferences, late sleeper, early riser, things like that. And we sort of try our best that way to find what would be, you know, compatible match. And so we try to do it that way, assuming that most of you might not know each other already. So if you have some people in mind and you have a specific friend in mind, you can make those requests. And if it's mutual, we can usually do that. But that's generally how we sort out the roommate situation. And we'll have more information about that later. Okay, so that's sort of, it's at 7:02. I want to respect your time. And certainly this sort of concludes the presentation. Again, this is recorded. I will share this with everybody who've registered. We'll have your email address. You have my email address, and here on this slide, you also see the main general NC State Prague email address. So feel free to use either one of those. Same questions. I will tell you, I will get to your email eventually. I'm a little bombarded right now just because of the time of year, but please just be patient. I will answer questions by email. Certainly we'll see that and we'll address it. We do have some social media to advertise if you want to follow us, and you can see sort of some more pictures and videos and things on site. I definitely encourage you to check out our various social media sites. And then of course, definitely continue to consult our website. And if you have any questions, please do let us know. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I'm going to say, thank you for attending, and we appreciate this. We'll send this out and say goodbye, but I'm going to stick around a little bit longer. So if you want to hang out afterwards and just ask me some questions, or Miri or Abby, we might hang around for, if you guys have time, for a few more minutes afterwards. So thanks y'all.